plague on the people may be stopped. Araunah said to David, "Let my lord the king take whatever pleases him, and offer it up. Here are oxen for the burnt offering, and here are the threshing sledges and ox yokes for the wood." O king, Araunah gives all this to the king. Araunah also said to him, "May the Lord your God accept you." But the king replied to Araunah, "No, I insist on paying you for it. I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing." So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen and paid 50 shekels of silver for them. David built an altar to the Lord there and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then the Lord answered prayer in behalf of the land, and the plague on Israel was stopped.
So last Sunday night, we studied that story. We learned that David had counted the fighting men of Israel, and because of that decision, maybe pride or self-reliance, God then comes and He gives David 3 choices. He could have 3 years of famine, 3 months of fleeing from his enemies, or 3 days of pestilence or plague. 2 Samuel 24 and verse 14, David said, "Let us fall into the hands of the Lord, for His mercy is great." According to the story, 70,000 men died before the destroying angel stopped at the threshing floor of Araunah. David comes to offer a sacrifice to the Lord, and this man says, "Look, I'll just give you my threshing floor. I'll give you my oxen as a gift. You don't have to pay anything, just take it." And David says, "No, I insist on paying you for it." Here's the part we're building our lesson off of tonight. "I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing." I mean, our focus this month is on the importance of sacrifice. And David says, I don't want to offer something to God that doesn't cost me anything. And so we're going to look at some areas of our lives where we have the opportunity to make a sacrifice to the Lord. And I always try to think in terms of, I don't want to preach in a way that is just disheartening. I hope you feel encouraged. I hope you feel challenged. We sing a lot of songs about what God has given to us. I mean, God has been so good to us. And we have an opportunity to give some things back to the Lord, to make some sacrifices to keep Him first in our lives. What are the sacrifices costing you in terms of time? And I just want to start there. When you think about the sacrifices that you make in your relationship with God, what do those sacrifices cost in time? Last week, I was at the Linder Road Lectures in Meridian, Idaho, and one of the other preachers that was on the lectureship said, "How are you doing?" And a lot of times I'll say, I'm doing good, or I'm doing great. Too many times I say, I'm good, but I'm really busy. And I said to him, I'm trying, because of this theme, I said, I'm trying to learn how to slow down. And his wife was standing next to him, and it was, there's a lot of discussion in the auditorium, and she didn't hear. She said, "You're trying to learn to slow dance." And I said, "No, that would just be weird. That is not what I said at all. I'm trying to learn how to slow down. I want to slow down and spend more time." You can't do these things in a hurry. It takes time to read the Bible and listen to God. You can rush through it, but to really read and let God speak from His Word into the circumstances of our lives, that takes time. It takes time to pray. We sing Sweet Hour of prayer, but sometimes we don't really spend a lot of time. We just rush through our day. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with short, brief prayers. I think that's good too, but sometimes it takes more time to really talk to God about what's going on in our lives, in our world. It takes time to worship God. It takes time to meditate on His Word. Those of you who practice hospitality, it takes a lot of time to do that. And if you've ever been involved in, the work of evangelism, it takes time to build relationships and to share the gospel. There's really something to this song by William Longstaff. Take time to be holy. Speak oft with thy Lord. Abide in Him always and feed on His word. Make friends of God's children. Help those who are weak, forgetting in nothing His blessing to seek. Take time to be holy. The world rushes on, and it really does. Spend much time in secret with Jesus alone. By looking to Jesus, like Him thou shalt be, thy friends in thy conduct His likeness shall see. Our study of the spiritual disciplines, I think it's not only healthy, but it's a little bit challenging. Jeremy had the lesson on solitude. And it's hard for us in a busy, loud world to find quiet, lonely places. To do what that song says. To spend much time in secret with Jesus alone. To get away from other people. To get away from all the other demands on your time. There are people that get a lot of your time. If you're parents, you know what I mean. A lot of your time is devoted to your children. And you give them your time. You're sharing your life with them because you love your children. When we talk about sacrifices, a lot of the sacrifices that we make don't really feel painful to us because a lot of times we're making sacrifices for people that we love and care about. The more we love God, the more we want to spend time with Him, the less it really feels like a sacrifice to do that. I think the thing that keeps people from reading the Bible or praying or meditating or worshiping God or serving others or practicing hospitality, these things take time. They take a lot of time, and most people are busy doing other things. Now listen, they're not too busy. They're just too busy doing other things. We all have plenty of time to spend with God. We just spend that time doing other things. If the only time during the week that you listen to God or you talk to God or you spend any time with God is limited to what we do when we assemble in a building like this, I'm just telling you, you're not spending enough time with Him. He deserves more of our time and more of our attention. And it's so hard sometimes because I don't want to come off as legalistic, but I do want to challenge you to re-examine the way you use time. People have an opportunity to serve God, and they say, well, I'd like to do that, but I don't have time. And I think we have to admit that people who use that excuse are right in their assessment, but wrong in their reasoning. Let me explain that. Their lives are so preoccupied with the things of this life that the eternal, kind of the spiritual eternal things are crowded out. And what busy Christians need to learn is that the complications of life that prohibit them from more devoted service, a lot of times that comes from personal choice and not outside influences. In other words, we don't have time for God because we've intentionally spent our time on something else. A choice was made. It's not that we didn't have the time, it's that we made the decision to spend it doing something else. We all have enough time to practice all of these various disciplines. We have the time to do a lot of great things with God. We just need to make God the highest priority in our lives. David says, I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. I want to encourage you to offer God the sacrifice of your time. Make Him a priority in your schedule. This is why I think it's so important to really start your day with so many of these things. But before you rush out to do everything else that you want to do, start your day with God. Give Him that first hour of every day. Because I think if we don't, what happens is we get busy doing all these other things and then God just gets crowded out. We're talking about the sacrifices that we make to God, and you look at your life with Him, and what have you sacrificed in the area of time? What have you sacrificed with regard to your money? And I think there are people that would say, well, I mean, I'd rather give my time than my money. And others would, I'd rather give my money than my time. But God deserves both. He deserves my money, and He deserves my time. Before Cornelius became a Christian, he's a devout man. He's a religious person, and he's committed. He's generous. Acts 10 and verse 2 says, he gave generously to those in need. As people who have been saved by the death of God's Son, we should be giving generously to those who are in need. We should be willing to make financial sacrifices to help the poor, to feed the hungry, to teach the lost. We should be investing our money to advance the kingdom of Christ. And again, listen, I'm using this as an example. I don't want people to go out and get the wrong impression. I'm just telling you, this is true. There are people, there are millions of dollars that are given to the political parties in our country. To the Democrats, to the Republicans. I mean, when you measure, it's kind of mind-boggling how much money people give to those campaigns. And it's okay. They believe in the agenda of their candidate. They give to support what they believe. I'm just going to tell you, regardless, here we're going to have an election, and I know a lot of people are upset about this. I don't care who's sitting in the Oval Office. Jesus Christ rules in His church. He does. And that is not going to change after the election. Jesus Christ is still going to be Lord. And He has a powerful kingdom that is greater than any country that's ever existed. Now, I'm not sure everybody believes that. I think there are some people that think that the kingdom of Christ will not stand based on who wins an election. The kingdom of Christ is an everlasting kingdom. It's going to stand no matter what. And I'm just bringing that up to say, if you're going to give to a political party, why don't you give to advance the kingdom of Christ? Because that kingdom is making an everlasting difference in this world. It's the most important thing, that the kingdom of God is the rule of God in the hearts of people. We say, well, you can't say that prayer anymore that Jesus taught, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. Folks, I want to tell you something. I still want God's kingdom to come to people that haven't come into the kingdom. And we should be giving to advance that cause. Now, none of that was in my notes, but all of it was in my heart. I think that when we ask people to give their money, They have to, it has to be a cause they believe in. And I think I'm preaching to people tonight who believe in the cause of Jesus. He's the one who's going to make the biggest difference in our nation. He's the one that's going to make the biggest difference in our families, in our marriages, for our children, for all the good that we want in our world. I think Jesus has the greatest influence. I want to say something here. Try to drop a really positive thought into this lesson. I'm just being honest with you. This bothers me sometimes. I don't want to be too overbearing. I don't want everything to feel so heavy. There's some really positive things that come along with the financial blessings that we have in our country. We are really blessed to have so much with regard to, the worldly wealth. A lot of that is enjoyed in our country. And I want you to hear what Paul said to Timothy. This is 1 Timothy 6 and verse 17. He said, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant or put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment." And I really want you to hear that last part. First of all, that God richly provides us with everything. Whatever good things you have, those things came from Him. He richly provides us with everything. Now, I'm just going to tell you that next part is something I want to grasp hold of that, and I want to grow in it. He gives us everything for our enjoyment. I don't know why, but there have been times in my life where I've had a hard time enjoying all the things. Sometimes I worry about, what I have or how much I have or what I'm doing with what I have. And sometimes it's just hard to do what this verse says. God, whatever you have, God has given that to you as a gift. And you know what He wants? He wants you to enjoy it. He hasn't richly blessed you so that you can feel guilty about it or ashamed about it. That there's some people that have a lot that almost feel like they've got to apologize for how much they have. If God has blessed you, thank God and enjoy it. But don't spend all of it on you. Is that okay? He's the one who gives us everything we have for our enjoyment, but that doesn't mean He wants us just to blow it all on ourselves. And just like we said about time, there are people say, boy, I'd like to do this or that. I just don't have the time. You have the time. You've made a conscious decision about how you're using your time, and you don't have enough to serve God. And the same thing happens with our money. So, boy, I'd like to get behind that work, but I just don't have the money. We have a lot of money to do a lot of good things. We just have to decide what we value the most. There are people who have spent not just a lot of money, they've spent all their money. They've spent money they haven't even made yet, right? And so there's not a lot of wiggle room. Somehow, we've got to decide that God's going to come first with our money. Now listen to me. I think it's important that you hear what I'm saying. I think it's good that you have things, hobbies or entertainment or travel. Whatever it is that you enjoy and you spend your money on. I don't want you to leave saying that we can't do those things because there's all these needs in the kingdom. That's not right. But there should be a portion that you give to the Lord before you do anything else. I think He's supposed to come first. And it should be a sacrifice that we make with regard to our money. David says, I'm not going to sacrifice to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. And so I want to encourage you to offer God a sacrifice of money. Make Him a priority in your budget. Make sure He comes first. Give as generously, spend as freely in your service to Him as you do in some of the, the other pursuits or interests that you have in your life. Be generous. The last area is, what kind of sacrifices are you making in the area of talent? And everybody has talent. Jesus has this parable, and the three main characters. You've got a 5-talent man, you've got a 2-talent man, you've got a 1-talent man. And so we know from that story that there are some multi-talented people. And I see them all the time. I think those people are so talented. And then sometimes you have just a 1-talent person. But I don't see anything in the Bible about a no-talent person. Somebody that doesn't have any ability that they can use in service to God. And I understand a talent in this story and that parable is referring to money. But Matthew 25:15 says, each according to his ability. Those talents that the 5-talent, the 2-talent, the 1-talent man, that they were given according to each man's ability. And that means each man had some ability. They each had something that they could put to work for the master. I think about this all the time. There is an amazing amount of talent that is sitting in front of me tonight. Now, you may not recognize it. And that might be part of the problem is that you haven't identified your talent. You don't realize how much ability you have or how you could be using the ability that God has given you to be a blessing to others. How do I take my personality, my resources, my natural inclinations, how do I put those things to work to do kingdom business? And some people may not know that. But I just think that there are tremendously talented people in this congregation. And the challenge is trying to figure out how to put all of that to work. Mac Layton said, some of our best teachers have never taught a lesson. And I think all he means by that is there are people with a talent to teach that either haven't discovered it yet or they just aren't using it. He said some of our best leaders are not out in front. Some of our best givers are not giving. We have a great wealth of capable, talented people who freely sacrifice for the promotion of civic, political, educational programs or organizations, but who have not yet learned to devote their abilities to Christ. Here was the conclusion, and I think I agree with him on this. He said one of the greatest challenges facing the leadership of every congregation is how to harness the power in the pew, how to inspire people to use their talents to accomplish the great work God has given us to do. How do we get people to do their best for God in the use of their talents? You know, it's like Jesus when he saw the widow that put in her mite. And he said she gave more than everybody else because she put in all that she had to live on. There are some people that may not be super talented, but they're using every talent they have to serve God. And then there may be others that are just bursting. I mean, sometimes you look and think, man, why did God spend so much attention on that one person? I mean, they're so talented, but they may not be making quite the same sacrifice. You know, just like our money, you give as you've prospered. And to whom much is given, much is required. There's a real challenge of finding your talent for ministry, identifying your ability in ways that you can serve. I know that North MacArthur is not a great church because, we have a great ministry staff, or we have a great eldership, or we have great deacons. All those things are part of the equation. I think part of what makes this church so healthy is that so many of you have found a way to use your talents to glorify God. I'm just going to tell you, we couldn't do something like Affirming the Faith without a congregation full of people who are willing to serve. What kind of sacrifices are you making? And we have great leadership. We have, I think, great education. We have, I'm just trying to think of all the, listen, there are so many talented people here. I'm not boasting. I'm trying to encourage you. What are you doing with your talent to serve God? We'll come back one more time to this statement. David says, I will not sacrifice to the Lord my God a burnt offering that costs me nothing. Every Sunday, we remember Jesus. Every Sunday, we take time to partake of the bread and the fruit of the vine to remember the incredible sacrifice that He made for us. And as you think about what He did for you, I think that should inspire you to think about what you want to do for Him. What are some sacrifices we can make for Jesus? How can we sacrifice our time, our money, the use of our talents? Can I encourage you, this idea of counting the cost? Just think about, spend a little time this week thinking about what are some ways that I can count the cost of following Jesus. And here's the real challenge, and we'll end with this, but if there is something between you and God, I'm not just talking about talent and money and time. I'm talking about something that you love too much. Jesus didn't say to all of us, go sell everything you have and give it to the poor and then come follow me. He said that to a man that loved wealth too much. It was the one thing, Jesus said, one thing you lack. You're so close to the kingdom, but that man loved something way too much. And Jesus said, you're going to have to give that up if you're going to come and be one of my disciples. And it may not be money. But there may be something you love as much as that man loved his wealth. And that's the thing that you've got to lay on the altar. That's the thing you have to sacrifice because you love the Lord. Hope you'll think about that and really do some self-examination and thoughtful kind of probing into your own personal values. What is it that's in competition for first? God's going to come first. What's competing with placing Him on the highest place? There may be somebody here tonight that's really struggling, maybe even with things totally unrelated to what we've preached about. You're hurting over something. You're struggling with some challenge or loss or difficulty in your life. You're part of a great family here. We love you. If we can pray for you, encourage you, help you in any way, we invite you to come as we stand and sing.